General officers, colleagues, Major Generals Eyre and Etherington, Professors Stéphanie and Douglas Lovelace, members of our military communities, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And thank you for inviting me to your conference on developing the super soldier. Is that kind of loud? It's really a pleasure for me to be here today, and I'm humbled that I've been asked to address this crowd. I find myself in the company of many impressive people who know much more about human psychology and cognitive powers, resilience, the physical body, and how to optimize performance across these areas in the military context than I could ever know. I can't say that I am anywhere near the same level given my background. I am just a simple engineer, albeit from Queens. But may I just say how encouraging it is to see such exceptional talent dedicated to the subject of making our soldiers better. And not just better performing, but better at living. It's true that we can't tell anyone how to live. We can only inspire, motivate, reward, and where necessary, discipline them towards a better path. This is where I hope I can offer some observations on the subject of leadership as it relates to the soldier of tomorrow. And while they are not the result of rigorous scientific inquiry, I will speak to you based on my experience as a military leader. Let me start with what we as leaders are expected to do. Military leaders, civilian leaders, government or business leaders, I believe are expected fundamentally to motivate our people, to motivate our teams, to do what it is we need them to do regardless of the dangers or risks, and to do this while inspiring them to develop, to reach deep, and to be better than they were. Luckily, in a military environment, most people take pride in their accomplishments and want to perform well. I defer to those who have studied human motivation on the reasons why this is so. I just know that most of the time it's true. Trust is also an important part of building a strong team, as it allows people to take risks on their commander's behalf and to constantly develop better ways of doing business. Leadership to me is also about letting my team come up with new ideas while knowing that we're all working toward a shared goal. I'm there only to give direction, to help my team see the vision. They're the ones to enact it, really. Make your people feel indispensable, and they will function at a level that is indispensable to a leader's success. Psychology tells us that motivation is a powerful indicator of performance. So I would suggest that we can't underestimate the power of positively reinforcing the efforts of our teams. Nothing I've said so far is new to anybody in the room. We as military forces have studied the personal attributes of leadership for years, and I'd like to think that we practice it daily. Let me go to another level now. And that's our responsibilities as leaders in an evolving world. Leaders in any environment are expected to adjust to change. Our government officials need to ensure that they are meeting the needs of their citizens on a constantly changing basis. We as military leaders are expected to evolve in response to the ever-changing security environment, to develop better and more responsive tactics, techniques, and processes, so we meet the enemy at our advantage. Much of what you will be speaking about at this conference is just about that. How can we outfit? How can we train, teach our soldiers to be better, faster, less prone to injury? We have learned throughout history that we can't ignore this responsibility, or we put our sailors, soldiers, airmen, and airwomen at risk. But I would submit to you that there is another responsibility that we as leaders are expected to take on, and that is a better understanding and more comprehensive look at what I call the human dimension of leadership. What makes our fighting force stronger within, more personally resilient, and more effective as a fighting team. While I was trying to think of what to say today, I was reminded that a military career is fundamentally different from all other careers. It demands sacrifices that others don't, and for the most part spans a lifetime of service. As we continue to serve, this likely means another deployment, another posting, and another separation from our loved ones. For those of us who serve, this may seem routine, but it should never be routine for a husband, a father, a wife, or a mother to embrace their loved ones for possibly the last time in service of our great nations. We need to keep this human aspect in mind as a means of validating what we do and to remind us that it matters. Our focus as leaders must continue to be on our people, not on numbers or policies or reports, but on the most important aspect of the military war-fighting machine, the warrior. We used to say in the Canadian Armed Forces, mission first, people always. We now say people first, mission always, because we know that we will achieve the mission, but we need to ensure that we take the needs of our people into account, into consideration first, before we send them out. Forums such as these are helpful in this regard. Training, education, the right equipment, and again, the right tactics goes a long way to achieve this aim. But if I may be a bit provocative, I would suggest that the same amount, or more importance, needs to be put on how we treat our people, how we ensure that they rise to the next level, both as individuals and as members of a formidable team. These are the organizational issues that require the attention of a leader, because it's the leadership that is ultimately responsible for creating the working environment where people not only function, but thrive, and know that they are respected by bringing their best skills and attributes forward. We cannot optimize anyone's performance in an environment where they feel personally diminished and where they feel powerless when they need our protection. We cannot tolerate behavior in our organizations that lowers people's personal value. In my previous job as the Chief of Military Personnel for the Canadian Armed Forces, I made diversity and the eradication of harmful and inappropriate sexual behavior two of my 3 priorities as commander. Eradicating harmful and inappropriate sexual behavior is an ongoing challenge. We heard Wayne Eyre talk about that this morning. It's an ongoing challenge because it requires a change in our overall culture. And this takes a sustained effort over time. We have made impressive progress in this area and will continue to support victims as a matter of priority, and ensuring that all recruits complete the necessary training from the get-go so that they come into our military systems, into our military family, knowing what our true values and expectations are. Over and above that, we, as the leaders, have to be honest and not just tell our subordinates what to do. We ourselves have to do it and insist that those around us behave with the same level of integrity. We have to take this responsibility on as part of our lives, in and out of uniform. I believe that this is the only way we will see success in this arena. If we live the change, we will see the change. If we wish to bring in more women, visible minorities, and Aboriginal Canadians into our ranks, our institutional culture must be one where respect for diversity is amongst our core values, much like service before self, for example, is understood, internalized, and lived by all members as part of who we are. One of the ways we heard this morning that we have moved forward here is the development of a Canadian Armed Forces diversity strategy and action plan that will see our organization become more diverse. This will ensure that the Canadian Armed Forces better represents the society that we serve. It will also make us more operationally effective. The nature of conflict is changing, and being able to function effectively across cultural contexts and in foreign languages is becoming critical to meeting mission success. We need only look at the successes of our operations in Afghanistan to see how a diverse unit was able to see, hear, engage, and interpret what homogeneous teams could not. Diversity is a force multiplier. More today, I wager, than ever before. And many of you know I am currently the Commandant of the NATO Defense College in Rome, Italy. I know, it's tough living in Rome. Having only arrived a month or so ago, I was surprised at some of the conversations that I've had already in respect to women in the military. I'm proud to say that Canada has been and continues to lead in this ground, and I am particularly thrilled to see the number of Western nations that have opened up more and more opportunities for women to serve in their militaries. But in one conversation, when the discussion turned to opening occupations to women, I was surprised to hear a colleague say that if we let too many women in, we would no longer be an effective fighting force. When I asked why he thought that, I thought he would use the rhetoric that has been around for some time now. Lack of physical abilities, too emotional, or men feeling a need to protect their fellow female soldiers, amongst other rhetoric. But he countered instead that women need to take time to have children, and so they leave their military. When I mentioned that there are ways that we can ensure that we meet their needs with policies and structures and more flexible terms of service options, his reply stopped me in my tracks. His country hasn't institutionalized these aspects yet. And I had to stop and think and quite honestly admit to myself, for all the steps that we have taken, neither have we. We are making progress, but our attrition rates for women tell us that we need to do more. Policy change and culture change have to move forward in lockstep. How well we do in this area will be the true test of leadership in an organization, because in this domain, orders and directives will not be enough. Which leads me to share in yet another discussion I had in the recent past, this time with Lieutenant General Dave Morrison, the previous Australian Army commander. Likely you recognize his name. He's the one who tackled the issue of sexual misconduct head-on through a very clear and decisive YouTube video. We met at a gender conference and had the opportunity to exchange ideas and notes on what we're doing to change our cultures, to embrace women within our military communities. We got into the topic of how many outdated policies our militaries have that have served us well 30 years ago, but don't necessarily meet today's demographics. One small example: when a woman or man goes on maternity or paternity leave, we have historically made them to feel like they've let the unit down. Why is that? And why don't we acknowledge the competencies and skills that they've learned while they've been away? It's about embracing the diverse nature of our teams and the richness that life experience brings to it. In the Canadian Armed Forces, as you know, we are trying to increase the recruitment and retention of women so as to increase our female population by 1% per year for the next 10 years so that we achieve 25% female representation. We can't do it if we do not have an environment that promotes respect for women as people and values their unique abilities. As I sum up, I want to offer just one more general observation for you to consider. In reality, the society from which we are recruiting is demanding change. We talk much about the millennials and how different that generation is from its predecessors. In speaking with my own children, and they fall into that generational category, I am ultimately inspired. Here are people who truly see beyond gender groups and barriers, beyond gender binaries, to the core of who a person is. And this is the group from which the Canadian Armed Forces and all armed forces will be drawing its largest portion of new recruits. I say kudos to them for insisting that we give them the working environment that they deserve in exchange for their cutting-edge skills and their agility that we need in our evolving forward future security environment. It's time to change, and it's not the first time that the younger generation is telling us older people to get on with the program. I know I need to conclude here, and I hope I've made a case that leading in the human dimension means more than just taking care of our people's physical and equipment needs. It means looking at outdated policies in terms of service requirements and bringing them into the 21st century. It means taking care of the whole person in his or her family, which will lead to taking care of the team. The areas I've focused on may not be your priorities, but I hope I have sparked your thinking on this issue, because leadership really is about enabling every team member to do their best, and that is really about optimizing our performance as an organization. Thank you very much.